Hello and welcome. That was a much longer intro than I thought it would be. So today we are going to be doing some data modeling with Jim Seconde. I'm going to add him to the stream and I'll let him introduce himself. Hey, Jim.
Here he is. Hello, good morning, everyone. I am Jim Seconde, and I'm a developer advocate at a communications platform provider.
Who will not be named for legal reasons.
I realize I haven't really said anything. I'm a PHP advocate specifically, so I do, Slim, Symfony, Laravel. I do a lot of Laravel specifically, but that's mainly because if you want to send a message with Laravel, you will use someone that I work for. And therefore we have quite a good relationship with a lot of the Laravel people. So that's what I tend to work on the most.
You do indeed.
So
we are here to do some data modeling today, right?
Yeah. So it sounds a bit of a sort of a sharp intro of like, let's do data modeling, but there's reasoning behind it. So yeah. I'll just do like a quick intro to what's going on. So in the local Birmingham Slack group, a message pops up saying, "Hello, does anyone have any experience in Laravel and this and that?" And everyone a couple of people answer and go like, "Oh, yeah, sort of." And my previous employer was Jump24, so there's quite a lot of Laravel people in the Birmingham space. And the next question is does anybody know how to configure cPanel? And everyone goes, "What? cPanel? Who's the 2023? Who's using cPanel? What's he working on?" So it turns out a startup has a startup that it was a sort of on relational terms with the person who's asking, who is Piper, who might be watching. That a couple of agencies have totally burnt their fingers, and we had it was basically a rescue attempt to try and get a Laravel. It was a Laravel backend and a React Native app, and the React Native app is the actual product. And we were like, let's take a look at it first to see if we can get this up and running. And we're not getting it up and running with cPanel. That's just not happening. And Chris at the Trouble team actually sort of started out, and we got it onto Laravel Vapor. We looked at the code and we're like, oh no. I'm going to be writing a talk on the actual code, but I wrote a test. There was no tests at all. They'd started doing modeling for the data, and there's quite a lot of data. There were no fixtures for the data. There were migrations, so at least we had that. But then there was none of the actual models in Eloquent and the ORM were being used, and they'd just done raw SQL queries everywhere. So we got to a stage in last week where we're like, this cannot be saved. This just cannot be saved. It's so bad. As soon as we spotted several places where as soon as N+1 comes in, this React Native app is just going to totally fall over. So we're like, right, let's start from scratch. And that's what we're doing. We've got the old code.
So that's why we're here, right?
Roots, and then we're going to look at API first design.
That is the plan. But to get there, we kind of need to do a bit of discovery, right? We need to figure out, okay, so this app, what is the purpose of the app, and what are the data models that are going to be underpinning it, so that we can then extract out a decent API design at the end of it. It's quite an interesting app. Definitely not one I'd typically think of, not being a very sporty myself. What tool am I using? This is Excel Draw. It is super awesome, really easy to use, and I will just grab that and drop the link in the chat. So Jim, can we explain the app at all? Are we able to do that, do you think?
I haven't actually seen the app properly in progress, working. I got the back end working,
yeah.
So I can tell you what it is, but I haven't seen it in action. So that's going to be quite. This really is starting from scratch discovery. But effectively, it's an app for grassroots football clubs, although it's written for football clubs, but I think the actual idea will be transferable to any other sport. It doesn't really matter. It would certainly work for rugby and clubs. And really, it takes care of a lot of running of a grassroots club. So a lot of design with like kits and finding sponsors and connecting fans to each other. There's a match center, and I really want to see the match center working. I don't know. I haven't looked at it because I haven't done the business side. I haven't looked at the business side of it. So there's quite a lot of things where I've seen like match events and things like that. So I think fans can track like a match happening in real time, which when you're at grassroots level, if you've got Dave's pub team, you wouldn't be able to do that. So it's like a big sort of boosting platform for from really sort of small clubs up until you start getting to professional level, which is probably just before you get to the kind of league, the sort of Conference North and Conference South. It's up to about there.
Yeah, well, I mean that sentence goes well over my head because I'm not a football guy. However, I do understand the concepts.
Yeah, you live in Wales.
Yeah, I've worked at a sports analytics company. Yeah, I live in Wales. Unless it's rugby or sheep throwing, I'm at a loss.
It doesn't count.
So we want to do some data modeling, right? So this app, it kind of centralizes around a user, really, doesn't it? I don't want it to be sloppy. There we go. And so we've got our user model.
Comics.
That is like, yep. There we go. Actually, no, it's some sort of code. It says code. I could go for like a monospatial code. I'm going for code because that's the aim of it, right? So it kind of centralizes around a user. You should be able to join me on this, Jim.
I am actually in the background. I've not actually seen this before, although mine's not updating. That's.
Ooh. Where are you? You're somewhere over here.
Yeah, I can see.
Oh, you're very off to the left.
Oh, that's what.
There he is.
Oh, there we go. What?
Drawing pictures.
Why is the canvas like that? Okay.
So it kind of, it centralizes around a user. And obviously this is going to be a Laravel app eventually. Like we do have some code already, but it's super minimal. We're at a stage where we're trying to figure out all of that underpinning data so that we can start to map out that business logic and the API design around what's going to be there. So this is where I need someone like yourself who really understands football a lot better than I do, because
okay.
I know you kick a ball. I know there's a net at either end or a goal at either end. You meant to kick the ball into the net at the other side to where you're standing.
This is making me sound like I'm some sort of football guru here, but I'm not. I mean, I'm a football fan.
Anybody is a guru compared to myself.
Okay, so a good starting point for the entities is what we started doing together originally. What the first thing I did is I said, right, if we're going to do API design, if we're going to do API first design, which we really need because the React Native app just is going to be driven totally off this Laravel API. So I started looking and writing an open API spec. It's just, with an open API spec, you can then use something like Postman, or you can use Insomnia, or you can use Stoplight Studio and start doing mock servers that you can then run on the React Native thing. All of this is the correct way of writing an app like this. So I started going through the roots and then looking at the entities. So really, the easiest way to start with the whiteboard up is we take the core entities that we know will need. There's other stuff where it's totally useless. There's a lot of the original root file at the moment. There's no concept of the correct kind of domain-driven design in API design. So everything is like some of it is like edit ground and then ground ID, and you're like, well, edit ground. Well, no, you'd have ground and then you'd have ground ID, but that would be a post or a patch.
Yeah.
So none of that exists at the moment, which we've got. So we've got to kind of update all of that. So
yeah, it's definitely not resource oriented the way that a REST API would be, right?
So we will go. If we draw out the models. Number one, club.
Cool. Now, so we're going to have a club up here.
Club is an overarching entity that contains multiple teams. So we've got to consider the relationship between club and team. So for instance, your club is, I'm going to choose my local one. Your club is Hales Owen Town FC, but you have the first 11, you have the second 11, you might have the women's team, and you might have, say, you might have the for grassroots ones like this, like a gay only team, for instance, something like that. There's lots of. I mean, you also have might have LGBT teams, that only use it. So you've got to consider that there's multiple entities that are attached there. And the first thing that I came across where I was like, this is already difficult is, and I know that you've come across this, Steve. So is if you are a user, you can join a club, but also there's a route that enables you to join a team, but that means you need the club ID, and then it all starts getting messy, and you have to decide what your domain design actually looks like.
There's no journey, right? I think that's the biggest problem, is that there's no journey to the API. It's all just kind of, it's just CRUD wrappers around their data model, which it's fine, but not useful.
But it's not. Some of this will be the start of this. The start of the entities will be more CRUD wrapper type things. But then when you start getting more, when we get to the match day logic and things like that, I think then we're going to have more like a more sort of intuitive design. There's some other things that really make no sense, like search country, and it's a post, and you're like, what do you mean?
If you're doing search, never do post. It's like a golden rule: don't do post and search.
Oh, there's post everything here. So they haven't considered, the original designers hadn't considered query parameters for things and actually being able to index, which means that almost certainly there is no pagination. I can guarantee you there was no pagination at all.
So does a club belong to a league?
Yes, it does.
Cool. This is where I'm showing my prowess of understanding football, right?
But then you have another thing to consider. You see, we're already tripped up because the club plays in a league, but it doesn't.
Yeah.
The team plays in a league. The first 11 might be in the Conference South, but the second 11 or the women's team might be not only in a different league, they're in a completely different league system, and with other clubs. So there we go. So really, it's the team that's attached to the league,
and that is fine.
In
that
the league,
in
the league, we have grounds.
Okay. Whoa, we're getting somewhere now, aren't we?
We're digging. Ah, here's Piper. Hello.
Hey, Piper. This is Piper. They are joining us on building this app, I believe.
Piper's our Piper is like sitting at the machine, like going, "Open up the front end. Open up the front end." Because there are
don't open up the front end.
We're like, we can't get to the front end. But soon we'll be opening up. Front end engineering. I think Piper's like main kind of fondness is probably for React. I think from School of Code, give me front end. Yeah. React and maybe, I don't know, Tailwind, possibly. I'm just putting it out there, but the tool stack is like the best thing ever. Is it the tool stack? That's completely wrong. Or is it what's the Laravel with Tailwind and Livewire?
That's tool stack. Tailwind.
It is tool. Okay,
Livewire. Yeah.
It's a thing of beauty.
You've got the Vilt stack, which is Vue, Inertia, Laravel, and Tailwind. That's my stack, Vilt.
Personally, I prefer. I don't like React at all. I prefer Vue. but it looks more JavaScripty, and they haven't added this JSX layer on top that I get confused by all the time. So we've got a ground.
At this point, we've got a user is able to join a club, find their team, which is part of a league that play at a ground.
Yep.
So that every team within that league play at that one ground. Is that the case?
So, well, it's the league. No, the ground is attached. Is the ground attached to the club or the team? That's another difficult question. Technically, if you were Manchester United, your ground is going to be Old Trafford. Why have I picked Man United? I hate Man United. If your club was Aston Villa and you played at Villa Park, then technically all of your home games will be at that ground.
Yes.
Except what happens if they're one of the lower down teams, like they're the under-16s team, and then they might be playing at the training ground. Or actually, what happens quite a lot in football is you actually play at a local stadium. So in my one, it might be Walsall, or it might be Kidderminster Harriers or something like that. So there's a sort of a difficult relationship. But I think for now, we could start off by saying the ground is at the club. But this is where the API first design is going to be really super important with our database modeling, because if you change that, once you start writing the rest of the app, it's going to be really hard to undo that relationship.
So that club, or every team within that club, typically plays at this ground.
This
is where, this is the... Okay. So what really happens is that a game is played at a ground, and the team playing could either be there, it could be classed as a home ground or their away ground.
Yep.
But the team and club don't have a specific ground themselves.
Sometimes
they could play between 2 or 3.
We need to keep the relationship available for you to possibly be able to attach a team to a ground. So it's quite, I don't know, that's going to be quite sort of an interesting one of how we sort of model that out.
So that could be a polymorphic one. So what I'll do is give that a green background, because that's the first polymorphic that we've kind of come across, right?
Our next one.
I don't actually do football. What club do I support? None. I tried playing football once when I was younger, and we lost every single game that I played. So I just thought it wasn't for me.
I was terrible at football. I hated it. I mean, I've been an Aston Villa fan since, well, it's in the family. So, and now I live in Halesowen, so I go to Halesowen Town, which is great fun. It's £6. I took Alex, my son, there, and and he was more interested in getting the chips, to be honest. But
yeah, don't blame him.
I also support Bangor City Football Club in Wales, because I went to university in Bangor.
Someone has to.
Well, actually, there's also my ex-fiance as well. Anyway.
Yeah, long story.
No, there's a long story. Here is our major polymorphic. I'm going to throw a grenade into the room. Okay,
do it.
The app has the ability for users and fans. We'll get to fans in a minute, to track a match. So we have an entity which is a match. The match is played at a ground, and the match is part of a match that happens in that league.
Okay.
Do you know what they haven't considered when they've designed this, which is really interesting? I say they, I'm talking about... actually, no, it might be some of the business developers. It's seasons. I'm going to check my Slack to see if they've considered seasons.
Yeah.
We'll have to leave that out for the moment. But seasons would be quite straightforward, I think, because then you'd add a one-way, you'd have a one-way relationship where you can just attach matches to seasons. Or, it would be an inverse relationship.
Yeah.
So how do we model matches? So the match is attached to all of those things. That's
the biggest thing. It's like this major part. So we'd have let's just drop that background.
Actually, so to use the correct terminology, let's not call it match. Let's call it fixture, because that was the original naming, was fixture.
It's a gaming fixture. It's that makes sense, right?
just to fill in for more sort of general football gossip. Steve's in the Valleys in South Wales, so I know that everyone else in the world supports Liverpool, but Steve will not be supporting Liverpool. That would make no sense. You'd support Cardiff City, really?
If anything, it would be Cardiff City, yeah, because it's
Ebervale, perhaps. Port, just for Gary Hokin, support Port Talbot.
Port Talbot. I don't think they play football there, but the air from the steel factory is probably not the best for playing football.
That steel factory is something that's really dystopian. Right, so we've got
a fixture includes what exactly? That is when Team A play Team B, right?
It is, and so it's going to be the teams, and it will be Team A versus Team B, and it will be
I'm going to move this out of the way a little bit so that we can understand it better. Ooh, that needs to be smaller. So I don't even know if I spelt that right.
Yeah, that's right.
So
Coventry City, the most one-sided, the most one-sided relationship. They hate Aston Villa, and we don't really care about them.
So a fixture is between two teams.
Yes,
they will play
within a league.
They'll play at a ground.
Which means you'll then be able to pull out the relationship of the club, but we probably don't have to worry about that.
No, not so much. So then there's a league involvement, which kind of encapsulates the teams. And they're playing at a specific ground for that fixture.
Yeah. Some interesting things, but they're more database related, that you can postpone fixtures to a later date. You can get fixture details, fixture ID. They decided to separate out the age group ID, which is an interesting kind of way of doing it. I think that's something for, well, that means that we've got, okay, so that's sort of an enum. So team can be attached to an entity, which is going to be age group. Some may have an age group, some may not. Like a first 11 team will just be the best players you can muster, whereas they also might have an under 18s team, and then you're defining what they are.
So they will be part of a team.
That's going to be like an enum that's attached to it.
It's an attribute on it, right? It's this team is under 17s. This team is 40 plus, because we like old men to play football as well on the weekends.
So we could. I think, to make sure we don't over-engineer it, I think originally I probably would have created a table, and it's a lookup table with the age groups to see if they're attached or not. But that probably is overkill. You could probably create an enum class and attach it.
Yeah, an enum would be much cleaner, because it's relatively static. From what I understand from our conversations previously, is that there's a set group of age ranges and set range of types of teams that can play, which are all passed down from the association level. So everyone within the grassroots football follow a certain association who set the rules of, you have under 17 males, under 17 females, and that's it. That's what they define as the different characteristics, right?
Cool. Right. There's this requires a bit of digging. There's the concept of a match center. So I think that the match center would be attached to the fixture. So when the fixture is happening, we have a match center which allows you to do.
So match center, from a data perspective, it doesn't tell you what it is. It's not descriptive.
Okay,
what you're really on about at that point, it's a game, right?
Yeah,
you've got a fixture which contains a game.
That might not need to exist. That we might need to be a bit more clever with this. I will say also the thing about enums as well is this means that we're doing it on far more of a sort of PHP 8 way, because enums have been such a great native addition to the language. Right.
Yeah, it means you can remove them from your database at last. Because managing enums in a database has always been a pain.
Yes.
Always.
One of my first startups that I worked at had like an event controller and an event, and then it had like enums in the database with different types of events. Man, that did not scale at all.
No.
It just got to one enormous table. It was in a mess. Yeah. Right, now I have to put the cat amongst the pigeons. Again, verbally speaking, because the cat has joined me because I'm speaking. Right, I've just realized when scrolling down, we need to change Fixture a bit, because you've attached league.
Yep.
Might not be a league. So we have a new entity, and it is called competition. Because you might not be playing in a league, you might be playing for a cup.
Okay, so in that case, what we have is we do selecty selects. We want to select all of this. And move that out for now. It could be a league or it could be a ground there. So a fixture is going to be, it's a game, right? We'll call it a game in brackets for now. So what that is going to be, it's going to be playable, and that could be playable for a league, or it could be playable for a competition. So we have found our next polymorphic relation, which I absolutely hate, but we will use.
There's going to be quite a few of those, I'm afraid.
Yeah. So this will be playable. Oh, wow. Okay.
Lots of arrows.
Too much going on. Let's grab all of that again. And we'll pop that back up there.
Okay, you've had enough fuss, Cat. It's time to go on the sofa.
And we're going to put that back down there. And what we'll do is we'll mark the entities over here. So we will have the league or the
competition.
That's kind of the attachments here. Is a league is playable and a competition is playable. I know I've got it over there, but we've got to understand the relationship between them as well, right?
Yeah. So the way that it was originally modeled, and I'm not sure that. Oh no! I think this does need to happen. There's the concept of a team sheet.
Okay. So who's playing in what team?
So if you think about the relationship here, you've got two teams playing each other, but that team, say under 18s on both sides, that team might comprise of 25 people, but you're not going to play all 25 people in each team are not going to play. It's going to be whoever's been selected, and then they might be substituted during a match. So you now have the concept of a team sheet.
Okay.
Which I don't know where that sort of sits in the diagram.
So that is for a league or a competition, right? And each team will submit I'm going to call it something else. Team sheet, it's got a horrible name to it. We're going to call it a roster. And
that's a logical name.
That belongs to a team.
It does.
And it will contain many players.
So this is where talking of players is a bit difficult, because when you sign up, there's really the concept of you can be a fan because you're following a team, or you can be a player who's signed up. So that we'll have to work out how that works in the relationship of the actual user.
So what we need really,
to be honest, it's going to be roles, isn't it? Really?
Yeah. Just delete that. I can go in a minute. So basically, we're going to have a role, but we're going to use that as an enum.
Yeah, I think it would
because it's
keep it
a
more
static.
simple.
It's a static list at the end of the day. That's going to be there.
I mean, as time comes, if you do it as an enum like that, as the app evolves, you might be able to then add sponsor, because then you have a sponsor view, and we'll get onto sponsors in a bit. Or you might have a manager where you might have backroom staff and things like this. But that's beyond the scope of a lot of this, I think.
Definitely.
They went for but roles of people that are not involved in the actual as a player. They called it the non-player list, which I do not like at all.
Yeah. So on that note, we kind of got into players, right? And a player is a user.
Yeah.
And we need a profile for that player.
Yes. So really, you're going to have two related entities. You're going to have player profile, or you're going to have fan profile.
That is where, I'm trying not to make too many polymorphic relations.
Okay, let's leave it at that. So the next big thing we've got to consider. I've done the team sheet. These update players, right? Let's scroll to the. There we go. Let me just scroll over here. In the roster, there's a relationship between the player and the roster and its position, and that's going to be an enum. Goalkeeper, left back, right back.
Okay, and is that a static list? Yeah. Again, another static list. You have certain amount of positions.
I can't think of. I mean, the only difficulty, which I don't think is really sort of relevant for starting out, would be the fact that someone might be subbed off for another player, and what the manager's doing is changing tactics, so they might actually shift things around. But let's not get into that.
That's fine. I mean, we can handle that in like a recording of events. So a player is entered into a roster for a team in a position.
Yep.
That position could be as a substitute, or it could be as a goalkeeper, or it could be as a, I don't know, water boy. Whatever maybe he's likely to find as.
It's no, because when you said as a substitute, if you're a substitute, you still play in that position. That's your position that you play in. So it's always just a position.
So what you need a status, basically. Is that a substitute, or is that a player? A starting line.
Yeah, so that's so when you pick your roster for the fixture, that's correct. You'll have your starting 11, and then you'll have substitutes. The substitutes will still have their position, but then we have the status of whether they are actively on the pitch or not.
Okay.
So really, a really key part to this whole app is sponsorship. Now, this is actually more complicated than I thought when setting out. So we're just going to start out simple. We have an entity called sponsor, and it's one of your big high up ones.
Okay, so what I'll do is put it over here. We have a sponsor, and that could be Laravel could decide to sponsor. Tronegate could decide to sponsor. Anybody could basically decide to sponsor at that point, right?
Yes. So the sponsor is anybody.
Yep.
But the question is, Steve, is what can you sponsor? And
Yes.
the answer is everything.
Cool.
You can sponsor a team, you can sponsor a club, you can sponsor a league, you can sponsor a ground, you can sponsor a fixture, and you can sponsor a player.
Okay, so a sponsor can have many sponsorships.
This will be an inverse relationship, I think, where you can actually attach it to sort of anything. So there's like, for instance, the sponsor, if they're sponsoring the fixture, you'd call that the match day sponsor.
Okay.
But you can also sponsor a player because, you know, when it comes to grassroots clubs, they need to get any to any kind of injections of cash for the team as possible.
Yeah. So a sponsor can have many sponsorships. Down to highlight that there's could be many. Like this. So a sponsor can create many sponsorships, and a sponsorship can be for a player or a ground, a club, team, or a league.
I think interestingly enough for the ground sponsorship is I don't think that the original developers actually considered that, or it might, or even actually even the business stuff. But you can get sponsored grounds. I mean, you know, it's
Yeah.
You know, my local cricket club is Halesowen Town Cricket Club, and they're sponsored by a pet shop, and they're also sponsored by a firm of solicitors. So
Sponsored by Greg's.
Sponsored.
I don't think you can get more British than being sponsored by Greg's.
A sporting team sponsored by pasties.
Only in Cornwall. So basically, that relationship could work out. So and also sponsorships are polymorphic.
It's also many to many as well. So you know, you can have multiple a player can have multiple sponsors. A club can have multiple sponsors.
Yeah.
So last kind of bits here. A bit more simple. These ones. A badge.
A badge. What
a badge,
is a badge?
Which is attached to the club, not the team.
And what is a badge?
You know, crest. I seem to remember part
like a logo.
But yeah, yes, yeah. But it's cool in this circumstance from our sort of domain-driven design. It would have to be a badge, because although it's the logo for the football club, you then have the badge on the shirt. And I think one of the things you can do in the app is you can actually either design or upload a badge, and then you're connected to be able to send off, like, to try and find printers to actually sort of, you know, to print your kit.
Does a league have a badge, or is it just a club?
The league will have a logo.
Okay, so that's less important. It's an attribute. It's not an entity.
Yeah, I would say for the league or the competition, both of them, it doesn't really matter. So, you know, like for instance, for competition, you've got the competition that's most likely to be brought up is the FA Vars, and the ones below it, which are the non-professional competitions. They have one logo. So I don't think there even needs to be a relationship. We'd actually have it on the league entity and on the competition entity.
Yeah.
So you'd have like a, you know,
that makes sense.
Logo URL attached to something uploaded via S3, something like that.
Yeah. Fantastic. So what other potential entities are there? Because obviously when a fixture happens, events are going to occur, which is what the match center is all about, right?
Yes. So let's have a look. Get match events. I'm going to have a look at how they originally modeled this. So I can bring it
while
up
he
in
does that, for everyone watching, this is the current map. A user is your typical kind of, I'm going to make that red because that's a main thing. A user is authenticatable, is someone who can gain access to the system. They will have a role which will depict whether they are a fan, a player, a manager, a sponsor, maybe. Any of those, and that will kind of determine what they are able to do. Hello, Chris. Thank you for joining. Each user will have a profile, and their profile could be a player profile. It could be a standard user profile. It could be any number of things, but we want to be able to relate back to a profile, not a user at all times. So a user is just this authenticatable entity that can join, manage its credentials, and then everything else is related back to the profile. So it's that extracted slightly. So then a player belongs to a profile. A club could belong to a profile. What about the scenario where the person who creates a club is the manager and they're also a player? They might also be a sponsor. Is that an option?
Can you say it again?
We're talking about a grassroots pub club type, right? So a user could sign up, create their club and their teams. They could be the club or team manager. They could also be a player because it's a pub league. But they could also be a sponsor for their team or a different team or club.
All of those are possible.
So when a user logs in, they want to, have many profiles in effect. They could say, I want to.
It is actually a sort of it is a roles and permissions system, really, because you can have multiple roles. So
basically, what we want to be doing is,
it's not really an enum the way we've done it.
No. I'm going to drop roles because I don't think it's going to be needed. What I think is needed is many profiles. If I add that over there, what actually happens is a user logs into a profile which has the ability to do X, Y, or Z. It's the same as a role, I guess. I'm logging in and I'm going to be using my player profile for this, or I'm going to log in and use my club profile for that, or sponsor profile for this. And if they're logged in under their player profile, they can't access the club stuff because they need to go to this, switch to kind of club mode almost.
There's going to be an interesting amount of middleware in this.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's going to have to be. I mean, I've already created one of the interesting middlewares for device recognition, but a user is going to need to have the current profile that they are logged in with. Similar to how I believe Laravel Jetstream does teams. You've got access to many teams. You can manage your team and you switch between them, and then within there you've got roles, which is a static value on Jetstream, but for us it would just be an enum on a profile. Similar sort of thing. So I am able, you can invite other people to join your team. So is profile the right word, or should that be something like an account? You're logging into your player account, your sponsor account.
The information that could be construed as profile would probably be on the user object. not on those account objects.
Exactly. So that could be like a player account, or it could be a club account, or maybe a team account or a sponsor account. But then a player needs to be a separate entity. So that account will need to be able to link to a player, a club, and all of these other things as well.
Yeah.
Or these will just kind of link back to the account itself instead, as it belongs to. And then it's kind of like a virtual relationship from an account to the others.
Oh, virtual relationships. I used to like doing those in Symfony. So I'm going to post something into the private chat, which you can, because I'm not logged into StreamYard, so you can put into the comment section. And we're going to get onto one of the core bits of the app, which is going to be tracking what happens in a fixture or a match.
So this is what you just sent me.
I've sent you in the private chat the original code.
Oh.
And I'm looking at the
this.
I'm trying to sort of pretend that the code was just unreadable. So what they modeled is that they didn't. We have to completely rewrite and make it intuitive with how match events happen, because match events are happening, but they sort of didn't know what to do. So then they created match events, but then they also created. They probably got mixed up by okay, let's say there's a penalty, but a penalty is being taken by a player. So we need a different table. So they've created different tables. So the logic is in multiple places. Do that. You're being trolled by people at your own company.
I know. I can't get the staff.
Can't get the stuff these days. So we have the concept of, and I don't think that this concept of events happening needs to actually be that complicated at all. You'll have a match event, and then we'll have inherited. It's going to have to be polymorphic of it, but match event types, and that's going to be substitution, penalty. So
this is where you're leaning on data modeling, where I would lean on software architecture.
Okay.
So what you're explaining is a perfect use case for event sourcing.
Yes, it is.
And you're trying to avoid it from the sounds of it. I don't want to.
I've never actually implemented. I've never actually implemented event sourcing like in production before, so it'd be a good opportunity to actually do that.
What's happening is all of these different events are happening, right? It could be a player substitution. It could be a goal is scored, or a red card is awarded, or even as simple as a player switches team or player switches transfers club. All of these things, they're events that are happening.
Yeah.
It's not just match day events. It's everything within this whole kind of ecosystem could be happening, and the fans want to know about it.
That is correct. So I guess we'll end up off Fixture. We'll end up creating something that uses something like, is it Spartsy that have a specific event sourcing library? There's a couple out there.
So we'll have this kind of event store overlooking all of the things.
Excuse me for 2 secs whilst I deal with my cat that's doing something horrible.
So this is going to be quite an exciting build, because a lot of this we will be building on stream. We're helping out a startup who have been, quite frankly, royally screwed over by a few people.
Some people. For libel, we can't say.
We can't go into detail, but
I genuinely don't even know who they are anyway. So
the story behind the company is also, it's really pulls on the heartstrings. I won't go into detail, but if you want to, Jim, you can do. But basically,
I won't. But it's
not our story to tell at the end of the day.
It is, yeah, and the reason why we did, I mean, one of the reasons I wanted to get involved in this anyway is that it's a real app, and there's real engineering and considerations that have to go into it.
Yeah.
I think, for instance, the possibility, like for what you've just described for how we do the match day events, of the possibility of actually creating a live app that uses event sourcing like this. If anyone hasn't come across event sourcing, it's quite an exciting way to handle data where you have quite a lot of it. I always remember that it's always sort of people give banking transactions.
Yeah,
quite a lot
always.
That tends to be
always
the
banking,
isn't it?
Every tutorial I've seen, it's always banking. It's always okay. I'm going to create an account, add some money, subtract some money, and that's it.
Well,
now this I don't. Is going to be strictly event sourcing as you could typically see it, but event sourcing lends itself really well. You know, because each event that is emitted and stored will have a reaction. We'll have to react to that, which could be like sockets, sending out socket data to connected clients, or it could be tapping into the Apple push events, and that sort of stuff. And if we have a replay, we're not going to want to re-push all of that if we want to replay that data. But then at the same time, an event happens, we're going to have to update a number on the fixture of this team has got this score, that team has got that score. We're going to have to start doing some kind of data projections and updates based on the events that are happening. So event sourcing here is going to be perfect.
I'll also, to add to that, what I'll do is, can I just share my screen for a minute?
Yeah. Let me remove my screen and we'll get
as a sort of educational, if it lets me, it should do.
You're gonna have to restart your browser.
I hope not. Is that yay? It worked.
It did, but I had to let you.
As a kind of example, when you don't consider how the data is modeled and how it behaves, i.e., coming up with an event sourcing type of system, or splitting out the data logically in the database, you end up with something like this. Is there like PHP Storm's got some thingy, isn't it? It's got
presentation mode or something.
Presentation mode. Where have they moved? I'm just getting used to the new UI. Sorry.
It is under View, Appearance, Enter Presentation Mode, or Enter Zen mode. Is quite nice, actually.
There we go.
I mean, it's a shame you're in dark mode because my eyes are offended, but yeah, I'll let you off.
Sorry, I always go to dark mode. Here's an example of what happens. This is from an educational perspective of what, and also a really big factor in us to decide we have to rewrite this app from scratch. We cannot cope with this API. Originally, I was sort of pushing back on it, saying let's try and work with what we've got. This is a thing called Common Controller, which already is a terrible name. Please don't ever call something Common Controller. It doesn't mean anything, and it's thousands of lines. This method is called create template. You've got the numbers. You've got numbers there. If match event ID is 71, then if 71 is the match ID, then it's 36, or it's not 36. It's the original one. And to manage template tables for posting, and then we do some, like, they can't decide whether it's home or away, so they do some logic on it. But then we've got a mixture of all sorts of things. We use the actual eloquent model in Laravel here. We use team select. Okay. If they're not, then there's some more logic, and then there's more query data with ifs. And we keep going, and it changes stuff, and it's all procedural. And if 30 is the request match ID, then the player image is actually something else. But if H is the place, then also 0, 0 equals, and it keeps on going, and it keeps on going, and then it's starting to work out things with photos. This is badge spelt wrong, and it's not even used, so don't know what that's doing there. There's commented code, don't know whether it's relevant or not. The reason.
So what it all boils down to is I think at some point we've all written code like this. I don't think
I
you
have.
can either. I've written code like this for fantasies. But yeah, no, we've all written code like this at some point in our careers, and there's nothing wrong with doing it this way until you learn to do it better, and that's fine. We're all on a journey
to build out a scalable app. Like there's also it's very useful for specifically for those developers in Laravel. I mean it is in Laravel, but this could be in Java Spring Boot or something. I don't know, but there's a lot of Laravel best practices that we can teach from this here. So for instance, we had team select, which uses the model, but then the rest of the app uses raw SQL, or it uses DB table, for instance. It's a mixture of styles, and you can tell that it's because it's a non-coordinated team that aren't talking to each other. This is now actually, instead of the logic existing within the code working out, it's then trying to get SQL to then do like a case when. And you just think, well, make up your mind. Is the logic going to be are you going to use it in SQL, or are you going to use it in here? By the way, this is all the same method, and I'm still going. And we've got.
You're going to get RSI from scrolling.
And we're still going, So
yeah,
when it comes to sort of what personally, it'll be the same for Steve. What we get out of this, there's a die left in there. Is that it's the opportunity to do a lot of learning of how to do Laravel the right way, but also lots of common pitfalls. I'll stop scroll. I still haven't managed to get to the bottom of it, so maybe I could just if is set display, then echo out and then dump everything out and die. Who knows what that actually is?
That's debugging.
That's debugging without xdebug or Ray, so please don't ever do that. So if anyone, there's a bit of interesting background of the code that we were looking at. So if these pop up during our time, we can put it in as like a learning exercise of, by the way, whilst we're modeling it, this is what we had to work with, etc., etc.
Yeah. But what I think, this is obviously something that I'm going to be live streaming for a while. I've volunteered to help out and to help get the API into a shape that's going to be usable for yourself and Chris to do the React Native app, do the API, Open API specification. But now that we've modeled this, we can start on that Open API spec, start designing an API that's going to work.
Yes. So the next sort of two steps really are going to be, if you write the migrations for the modeling, whilst I'm simultaneously writing the Open API spec. At the moment, Chris is building out the React Native one. So we'll come up with the sort of the scheduling and stuff. But when we're doing,
Chris is going to stream the app as well. So that could be a lot of fun. Is live streaming some React Native code with an API, a Laravel API with an Open API spec.
Yeah, it's so it's a rare opportunity where you are actually seeing like an actual product that will be released being built in real time. Just for sort of like for any other curiosities, yes, we are. There's 4 of us, and we are all doing it for free. But it's nothing comes free. The actual the free bit is the learning exercise, and we get content out of it.
Yeah, we get to live stream, create talks, do all the stuff that we might want to do as developer advocates from this really interesting story. And at the same time, anybody watching can watch a production app being built on live streams, from the basics of data modeling to how we turn that into migrations, to how we're going to use an Open API spec, to how we're going to validate the Open API spec against the API that I build, and allowing then Chris to shut up a little bit. Chris to then do React Native. And, you can actually watch a product being built, which is rare.
I think the only time you ever get to see massive amounts of production stuff being handled in real time is when like GitLab goes down and then they stream their own engineers fixing it.
Exactly.
But I think they're almost too open.
What I might try and do as well is, because there needs to be an admin console for this, right? What I'm going to look to do here as well is maybe we could get someone from the Filament team to come on and help us build an admin dashboard as on a live stream, and make the most out of Filament 3. Or we could get Piper on, and Piper can help build the admin dashboard in the way that needs to be done.
Yeah, in
I don't know what the plan is with that.
In terms of we're still very much in sort of in the plan. We've done what we set out to achieve starting out, which is quite good. But in terms of the sort of the back end and administrative console, if you like, there was one, but it didn't really do anything. And when you're building out an app like this, you've got to do the sort of the dog fooding technique where you need to. Yeah. It's like when you build a game, you build the tools to make the game, right? So I think I think it'd be quite exciting to get Filament in there, because I haven't done anything with it, and I think
if you like Toolstack, you will love Filament.
Okay, yeah, there's some of the off the shelf things in the Laravel ecosystem that you can do, like Filament, are just amazing. So it'll be quite cool to see it.
And also, we're going to have things like, the mobile app is going to have search. There's going to be there's search on all apps. And what we're going to want to do is have a search endpoint that can search, like maybe search around Golia or something like that, whatever we choose to go through. But not a lot of people approach search in an API the right way. So another perfect educational opportunity to say, this is how you can add a search endpoint. Here's what you can do. Here's the options, and we can kind of go through that stage by stage. All of those decisions that you typically make in building a production application or product. So a lot of fun to be had, I think.
Cool. Right, I better go and do some planning because there's a lot of it.
Yes, please. I better go generate some models. I need to now go and plan what models need to be created in what order, so that I can actually create all of this.
Ignoring Chris's trolling. Code-wise, we are actually in a private GitHub repository, which kind of makes sense. Yeah. So unfortunately, you'll have to wait until the streams to actually see the work that's being done on Open API. For anyone that doesn't know, because one of the reasons I'm doing the Open API spec is that for work, I maintain a lot of Open API specs, some really quite big ones. So there's the opportunity to have a look at things like Redocly and Stoplight Studio. Yes. There's a lot of options, but these days designing APIs should not be an afterthought. It really needs to drive your app. So it's that's the reason why I'm kind of doing it. The tooling is getting much better for it.
The tooling is a lot better, and Redocly is really one of the standouts for me right now. It's got a lot of additional tools alongside it, like the Redocly CLI, which you can use. It's great. But if we draw a line under it for now and say that's the end of that.
Cool. I was going to say that's a new thing I found by accident, that Redocly is built into PHP Storm now. So if you open an API spec, it renders it. Pretty cool.
You say it now.
So, yeah, thanks for inviting me on, and thanks for tuning in, everyone.
Yeah, and yeah, I'll be probably go live with this again tomorrow to do some of the data modeling in Laravel side. So, I suppose I'll catch you tomorrow. And Jim, again, thank you for joining me. Very much appreciated. And thanks for inviting me to join in on this project, because it'll be a lot of fun and it's a good cause.
That's all right. I'm excited for it. Thanks, Steve.
Cool. Well, thank you very much, everyone. Have a great day, and I will catch you later. Thank you.